This week, we are at the end of the book of Numbers. We're at the in this journey. The Israelites are in their journey, um, and they actually have even in this particular part of the Torah, there's a special trope that goes with it, song, because that there are a number of verses of it that they go from here to here and here to here and here to here, and there's a special trope that goes with that also. Um, and I'll talk about their journey, but to remember that the subtext is always when we sit, when we meditate, we are also on a journey. We also go on a journey, on that inner journey, doing that inner work. So let me take you to share some with my screen. Um, yeah. And I have to move your pictures a minute so I can read the screen myself. There we go. Okay. So this is the second verse in this parsha, and it says, "Vayiktov Moshe et motzaehem lemasehem al pi Adonai ve'ele masehem lemotzaehem." Okay, if you notice there, we have motzaehem lemasehem, and here it's masehem lemotzaehem. So they get turned around. It's the same two words, which means their comings forth and their journeys. So Moses wrote their comings forth and their journeys by the mouth of God. These are their journeys and comings forth. So we have these two things: a coming forth. What is that? And journeys. Well, I kind of think I know what that is. And then the Torah flips those two words. And of course, the rabbis can't simply leave that alone. They're like, why? There's got to be a reason for that. So we're going to look into that. But also, we notice here it says Moses wrote about this by the mouth of God. So it's this story coming from God through Moses to this Torah. So. And there it is. There's the two words. There's the motzaehem and first, and then here it's second, and masehem first, and there or second, and now it's first. So for visual people who are visual, I tried to put the colors so you can see what's going on here. And masehem is their journeys. Motzaehem is their coming forth. It's like motzi when we do motzi. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the ground. So it's that coming forth that we've got here. So breaking it down, Moses wrote their comings forth, meaning they're bringing forth an uplift. Well, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna skip that for right now because it doesn't make any sense yet. What I'm gonna do first instead is share with you this drash, this teaching by Kirishat Levi on this parsha, on this exact thing, on this wordplay, and. Kirishat Levi, of course, is a Hasidic master, a student of the Baal Shem Tov from the 18th century, and he's bringing our attention to that verse, the comings forth and the journey comings forth. And he asks, like, why do we have the order change? Whoops, I'm gonna stop share for just a second. I'll go back to that. We'll read that whole thing, but just as setting up, I forgot there was something I wanted to set up first. So, yes, it's known, like, why the order change? And he says, it's known that all the children of Israel's journeys in that great and awesome wilderness in the Midbar were designated by Yud-He Vav-He, as we saw in there, like written by Moses by the mouth of God, by mouth of Yud-He Vav-He. So they were all designated by Yud-He Vav-He, and they were for the purpose of bringing forth holy sparks that had fallen into the shells there. Okay, I'm going to explain that. But remember, they're on a journey from Egypt to this land that's been promised. And I don't know if you remember, but if you look on a map, this is a journey that you could do in a couple weeks. That's all it would take, right? Just a couple weeks. But they went through the golden calf, and they went through the spies that said, oh no, we can't go there. They're too big. We're little and we can't do it. And all of these things that in the end, it ended up taking 40 years. So this is like, we're all old enough to remember Gilligan's Island, a 3-hour tour. Okay, only even more so. They got, yeah.
They didn't have GPS.
Right, they did not have GPS. Yes, right. They did not have, they were developing their internal GPS, and some of them, a whole generation of slaves, did not have the capacity, simply did not have the capacity. And they would stop and be distracted. There was Korach and his buddies that are like, hey, Moses, who put you in charge? Maybe we should be in charge. Like, they got distracted by a lot of stuff. So Kedushot Levi says that on this trip, the journeys and the comings forth were for the purpose of bringing forth holy sparks that had fallen into the quote-unquote shells that were there. So he's referencing the Lurianic myth. Isaac Luria, the Kabbalists of the 15th or 16th century Kabbalist, one of the Jewish mystics that lived in Sfat. And that myth was a creation myth of shattering of the vessels, Shvirat HaKelim, in which, so the infinite source, the infinite formless light of Ein Sof, so Ein Sof, the God that is beyond our ken, the God that is without end, starts to, like, how do you create a universe? Well, in this story, in our sacred myth here, it says, Ein Sof, who is this infinite formless light, takes a little part of Ein Sof self and forms it into vessels of condensed light. And these vessels are imagined as Hebrew letters. But the light is so brilliant and so overpowering that the vessels can't hold it. It shatters. It shatters. And the shattered letters that were supposed to contain it fell into the physical world. They fell into our world and became physical, became material husks or shells. So Kedushot Levi was using that word shells. But you can think of it as a husk around a nut or something like that. And the Hebrew for this is klipot. A klipa is the singular, klipot is that which covers something. And they're saying that in this physical world, those klipot conceal that spiritual light that they held. So this light falls into the world. It's like psh, big explosion. They fall into the world, and yet they're not always visible to us. They are covered by the physicality of this world, by sometimes the difficulties of these worlds. So when Kedushot Levi says that the purpose of these journeys was to bring forth holy sparks that were hidden in the shells, or the klipot. He's saying that the journeys were a process of inner work. Inner work. So he notes that the Israelites camped in some places for a long time, and other stops were brief. And he connects the time spent in each encampment on their journey to a particular kind of inner work hinted at by the name of the place. And now I'll share the screen again. So there were 42 wanderings that are, place names that are in this parsha, 42 wanderings. And it says, among others, they camped at Haradah, which means trembling, like the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox. They get that name from the piety, that trembling, so they camped at Haradah. They camped at Mitka, which is like Matok, which means associated with sweetness. They camped at Har Shafer, which Shafer is a literary word for beauty. So this means that when Israel camped at a place where there was a bad sort of fear, that Haredah, they would worship Yud-He Vav-He with an exalted fear. So they find the bad fear and they work, their inner work is to turn that around into an exalted fear. So filled with awe before God's overwhelming majesty, rather than being like just afraid of retribution or smiting, but to turn that into awe. This was their encampment at Haradah, representing the quality of fear, the place where they had to serve God in fear. When they camped in a place where there were bad sorts of love, so adultery is a bad source of love, improper relationships or imbalanced relationship where one person is using the other person, bad source of love, fallen there in the breaking, as is well known, then they needed to serve God in true love, This was their camping in Mitka, the quality of love or sweetness. So too at Har Shafer, referring to the quality of beauty or Tiferet. In this way, they raised up all the sparks that had fallen there, restoring them to their root, the place of the holy. This was the purpose of their wanderings in the wilderness. Moses wrote of their comings forth, meaning they're bringing forth and uplifting the sparks from their shells along their journeys. So motze'ehem, so just like motzi lechem min haaretz, bringing forth bread from the ground, this is lifting up sparks from the shells, finding that spark of holiness that is hidden by something in this world. This was all by the word of God in the course of their journeys. Then it details, these are their journeys, saying that the purpose of these journeys was the comings forth, bringing forth those sparks and raising them to the source of holiness. So this is why we have it going back and forth, which is interesting textually, but for us, for our meditation practice, we might say that we raise sparks or find illumination when we rest, when we sit and see our moment-to-moment experience. Yes, I see heads nodding. Yes, so okay, so I'm not off base here. You know what I'm saying. We get to see what's going on, and we only see it when we stop and encamp. Maybe as our practice deepens, we can see it more readily, even in motion. But regardless of how deep our practice is, it is still important to sit and be still to see what's going on with us. So we get to encamp in awareness and begin to see the patterns of our habitual thoughts. One of the encampments that is part of the text, there's a place called Takath, which sounds like Tachat, which means below, beneath, or under, right? Or it also means your bottom. And when we encamp with attention, even in awareness, we stay with it long enough to see what might be underneath our own habits of thought and feeling. So I was saying on, I don't know if it was Sunday or it was last week, it was in the last, either Sunday or last Tuesday, I think that even though I'm on vacation now, the first week I was still had some work things and things weren't working out as well as I'd like to, and I noticed that I was and on top of that, I am a Supreme Court watcher, and it all blows up in June, and I was sitting with a lot of that, and I felt like I recognized, it feels like I've been sitting in vinegar. that there was, that I'd been moving around my life, walking around. I'm on vacation, but I've got this aspect of vinegar, of just of sourness and a little acidity, and it was just there. I didn't have to change it necessarily, but bringing my attention to it's like, oh, and I recognized that I was carrying that with me from my work situation, from listening to the Supreme Court, and all, like, it's like, oh, okay, right. I need to be careful when I am talking to, and of course, Bill, or anybody's, like, because that is that close to my tongue, and it's important to know. So it's good to know what is here. It might show up, it might be anger or frustration that shows up in our clenched jaw or the back of my neck, or realize been gripping my hand all day long, or realize I've been, clenching my jaw or whatever. It's like, oh, right, good to know. That is going on in this encampment. Or maybe I am feeling really good and friendly and generous and outgoing and loving. It's like, and I want to use that well too. I want to, like, let me spread that around. Let me spread that around. I'm feeling, strong and outgoing. Like, can I help? Where can I help? Where can I put this to use? So the habitual stories that we all have, that we tell ourselves about our core wounds and also about our inspirations. Turns out there aren't a ton of them, but there's some core things. And they can be so habitual that we don't even really notice them or question them anymore. I can be ignorant of my own physical responses. Sometimes the mind says, like, nothing to see here, keep moving on. And they cover over the illumination, the sparks of divine messages that are in my own body. That recognition of that vinegary feeling, that was a divine spark. Like, underneath that, not only tells me how I'm feeling, but lets me know that One, it's not permanent. It showed up, and I don't always feel this way, but I feel this way now. And that it's not necessarily my natural or my only way to be, and that it's impermanent. That knowledge is a divine message. That is a divine message about how it actually is to be human. And so if I can stand to camp there a bit, to see with awareness like what's going on, bringing some loving kindness, loving connection, friendly curiosity, however you want to say it, then what is illuminated, that vinegariness or whatever, can be used towards wisdom rather than projecting it onto somebody else. The next person who walks in front of me in line or something like that, making something big out of something small. So we take that moment to sit, feel it arise, and however long it takes, know that either it will dissipate in this next moment or eventually, like I know at least 8 hours later, I'm not going to feel the same way. Maybe 5 minutes later, maybe the next breath. And allow it to move through. Allow it to move through. Let me not react. Let me not ignore it. Let me not act out. Let me not overreact to whatever the situation is, but let me respond with some wisdom. And I can't always do it. We don't always do it, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. As my friend Rhonda says, we're de-stupiding ourselves. I may not end up being wise, but maybe I'll be a little less stupid. To the best of my ability in that moment. So let's go ahead and sit. I'm hesitating because there's two ways we could go here. I think I'll try to combine it is what I'm gonna do. One second. Let me get the right thing in front of me. Where is it? Aha. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and find your seat. Set aside anything that needs to be set aside. Make any adjustments to your physical posture that will allow you to commit to some stillness for the next 25 minutes. Sit in a way that is both relaxed and alert. And let's take a few deep cleansing breaths to start. So begin with a slow, deep breath, inhaling into the belly, feeling the belly expand, and then exhaling slowly, completely, and releasing worry as you exhale. Relaxing for a minute at the end of the exhale before inhaling again. Do that 3 or 4 times at your own pace. A slow, deep breath. Feeling the belly, Exhale slowly, completely. Releasing worry. And then let the breath settle into its own natural rhythm. Let your attention, let your awareness settle into the feeling of the body as a whole. From the top of your head down to the tip of your toes, the body as a whole. Notice if there's any feeling of tightness or any holding on within the body. Notice it and let it relax any amount. Just allowing the bodily feelings to settle in their own way. Deeply let be into the body. Let's camp right here in the body. Pitch your tent, drop your anchor. Feel the gravity of the body. Let the body draw you into oneness with it. As if letting the body do the meditating. Let the body meditate you. And if the mind begins to wander, let that grounded feeling of the body draw you right back, just like a magnet. letting the awareness settle into the feeling of the body as a whole. Letting the body do the meditating. Let it meditate you. And to the best of your ability, bringing friendly curiosity to any sensations in the body. Continuing to breathe from the belly, feeling the belly expand and contract, rise and fall with each breath. Letting your awareness rest so lightly on the entire inhale and exhale. Notice any feeling of holding on to the breathing process, and let that relax any amount. Just deeply let yourself be in the bodily feeling of breath. Let the feeling of breath draw you into oneness with it. And let the breath do the knowing. Let the breath meditate you. And when the mind wanders, let that feeling of the breath draw you right back. Now, if you like, begin to sense whatever emotional feeling might be present within you, but notice it from within the body. So not just thinking about it, but sensing it from how it feels from within. You're welcome to recall an emotional feeling that's quite familiar to you and let yourself feel that now. Or you might notice any subtle emotional feelings that might not even be fully conscious. Like when I noticed my vinegar feeling. There might be confusion, anxiety, worry. Maybe there's no word for it, but you simply are liking or disliking a little how things are. Maybe there's a sense of trying to hold on. There may be a strong emotion. There could be joy, fear, frustration. You might feel numb. And these are all feelings that you can practice with. Any feeling. And become aware of that feeling within you with a sense of deep permission for it to be here. Deeply allowing it, gently welcoming it. Just sitting down and camping with it, like a friend quietly present to a friend. Let this feeling have all the space that it needs to find its own place and to settle in its own time. No need to ask why or to solve. Simply be with it. Just notice it. Camp with it. No need to change it. Just let things be. And one feeling may open to a different feeling. And simply welcome that in the same spacious way. And if part of you is having any difficulty with this practice today, just notice that feeling within the resistance or difficulty. Just notice how that feels, that reaction. Becoming compassionately aware of the feeling in the very same way. Letting it have all the space it needs to settle in its own time. And if you notice the mind beginning to spin a story or wandering into chains of thought, try and notice the feeling, the emotion associated with those thoughts. Becoming present to that feeling, that emotion in the very same way. Accepting, spacious. Give it all the space it needs. Now bring your awareness to any thoughts arising in the mind. Notice if there's any sense of grabbing on to the thinking process or to a mental framework. Is there any holding on to a sense of self, to a thought, to a memory? And let that feeling of holding on relax deep within. Give the heart and mind permission to fall gently, totally open, letting the mind reunite with the natural openness that's already here. Illuminate that light within the shells. The natural openness that's here beyond any reference points. Let this total openness of mind draw you into oneness with it. And let the openness of mind do the knowing. Let it do the meditating. If patterns of thought arise or emotion arises, just allow it to unwind and release within this space of deep acceptance, letting everything be. And when the mind closes up again, you find it holding on to a narrow thought or feeling, story, just let the heart and mind relax and reunite with the natural openness that's already here. No need to grasp, it's right here. Let those patterns of thought and feeling just unwind and release within this space of deep acceptance.